Hello, my name is Roland Waits, and this is a video about the 1944 book published by British spies to terrorize Adolf Hitler. I wear a mask because what my face looks like doesn't matter. It keeps me safe on the street. And this channel does not exist for hits, for ads, or for money. I just want to get the information out. Anyway, this book, this book is something you have got to read to believe, because it is so detailed, it so beautifully explains the complete dysfunction in Germany that gave rise to the Nazis, and the fundamental foundation of the German military society that completely overwhelms any other loyalty but to that society and to the country of Germany. And I'm not trying to make excuses for these guys. None of these guys were humanists. They were all killers. But within that realm of being a killer, a lot of these generals despised using military ordnance, maneuvers, and materiel to kill civilians who are not a threat. And they didn't do it because they loved civilians. They did it because it was just a waste of time. It was a waste of materiel and effort. Anyway, this book was published in 1944. The copy that I have was published by Doubleday, Duran and Company in 1944 out of Garden City, New York. Here's the book. I can't open it up and show you the pictures, but there's a picture of every one of the generals in this book in 1944. It's their service pictures. So W.E.Hart is said to be the publisher of this work. W.E.Hart is actually an invented name. That's not his real name. The explanation in the glossary is that the author was an officer in the Reich War and took several general staff courses. He opposed the Nazi Party. He wound up having to leave Germany because he was in Nazi Germany at the time. He was actually working with opposition forces and realized that he could not stay there. He was going to get killed. So he left Germany, he signed with the British Army, and he was invalided out of the service, which seems to indicate that he was in action and got injured. Anyway, when I read this book, and it's a great read because the detail in this book you will never find anywhere else. I'm telling you, this thing is a gold mine. The first chapter is about a guy named General Werner Von Fricht. I don't have a picture, but I can tell you how deep the hate of the Nazis was for this guy, and how that hate got transferred into our own society. Von Fricht was an old school German society military genius. He was a firebrand. He despised everyone under Hitler. He wasn't too fond of Hitler either. But he especially despised Himmler. He despised Goering. He despised several other people that Hitler had underneath him. And I'm going to make another video about him because that guy's a fascinating guy. And if you look on Wikipedia, that entire description of the way he died is the Nazi live version of how he died. In this book, it tells how he died. I'm going to tell you how he died because you're just not going to believe it. Werner von Fricht and Hitler had words for many years, and several times Himmler and some of the people working with Himmler worked together to try to kill Werner von Fritsch. The details in this book about how he escaped twice are just amazing. And it appears that Werner von Fritsch may have tried to kill Hitler. But it was never proven. And I actually think that Fritsch would never do that. I think Fritsch was actually set up by Himmler, so that Himmler knew if he could convince Hitler that this guy was a bad apple, that eventually he could wear down Hitler and get this guy killed and out the way. The only problem is, I'm going to get too far into the story, but let's just put it this way. Werner von Fricht was the legacy. He was the guy who took over from an extraordinary military tactician genius. I don't remember, it's a 5-letter name starting with S, I think Steed or something like that. And they had planned, Steed had planned since like 1928 to invade Poland and invade Norway, and to figure out a way to efficiently defeat all of these countries with the least amount of military units. And Fritsch had taken that plan and turned it into a piece of artwork. Anyway, he was just a cocky bastard. He never gave Hitler, he refused to give Hitler the Sieg Heil respect that Hitler got from everybody else, because he knew how important he was to the German war plans. And he screwed himself. He made himself untouchable. He thought he was untouchable. He found out real soon he wasn't, and he got himself killed. But the way he got himself killed, unlike the Wikipedia entry, was he was in Poland, and he had been relieved of command, but he went back into the military and he rejoined one of his old commands. He was out in the field, and he had his adjutants with him, and he told one of his adjutants, "Look, it's cold, let me get my jacket." And his adjutant turned around to get his jacket, and 4 SS men were behind them, and the 4 SS men pulled out their Lugers and they started shooting, and they killed the adjutant. And von Fritsch turned around with his Luger and killed all 4 of those guys. He killed all 4 of them. The last guy he killed when he was on the ground dying from the last guy shooting him in the head and the chest. But he aimed his Luger from the ground and killed that guy. Dude was amazing. He was amazing. Now, he had demanded from Hitler that Himmler and this other guy get immediately be tried. One of them, he said, needs to be put to death immediately. This was because they had kidnapped him and they were going to kill him. And he got rescued by another general that he had left notes with. This is how smart this guy was. He says, if I ever disappear, send some adjutants to look for me right away. And they did, and they found him. Anyway, a lot of information in this book. A lot of information. I'm really disappointed, not from a standpoint of protecting Fritz's legacy, because he was a Nazi general, but just for the truth. Because I believe this. You know why I believe this book? The reason I believe this is when it was published. Because this book is a dagger pointed directly at Adolf Hitler's ego and his control system. In November of 1936, the French paper L'Oeuvre publishes an article about the entire Nazi civilian command dysfunction. It says the Nazis, Adolf Hitler was trying to push for a much quicker advance into Europe, into countries. And Fritsch was saying, we're not ready. We need more. We need more of everything. And you're going to stretch us thin. Now, if you want us to win this entire plan, And the entire plan was what they tried to do with Russia. They had planned to invade Russia from the start of World War II. And the reason that they didn't invade Britain was because as soon as they get their majority of their troops off the mainland into Britain, Stalin would have invaded. Stalin was waiting for it. Because after they got Poland and after they got France, they went into after the Soviet Union, and they were in shock at the amount of military units and tanks that they found that were just sitting there waiting to invade Germany. Because they had signed an agreement, and Stalin was waiting. Man, he was waiting. But he waited too long. Anyway, this article, this 1936 article that got published, detailed the Nazi civilian command's complete incompetence and the lack of faith that the German military leaders had with it. It was opposed by General Blumberg, Rickenau, General Von Fritsch, von Rundstedt, Admiral Raeder. Von Fritsch actually told Hitler, if you go ahead with this, I'm going to resign. I'm not going to support this. And Hitler called this newspaper article, due to its sources, high treason. That was his reaction in 1936 to an exposure of this kind, and not even as bad as this. This book got published in German, I have no doubt, and it got distributed, intentionally distributed by probably, who knows, French partisans, German sympathizers, German spies that were in Germany at the time, directly where I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they got one of these copies of this book into Adolf Hitler's hands, because this book is devastating. It really is devastating, because it details how some of these generals are brilliant and how some of these generals are completely incompetent, and how the Nazis were a bunch of gangsters. They really were. They were a bunch of gangsters. Von Fricht died because he refused to work with these damn gangsters. And he even called Hitler, I hope he was the one who said it, but he said somebody called Hitler the Lance Corporal who was out of date. The Lance Corporal who was out of date. Because Hitler had served in World War I in the army, and without any distinction, to be honest with you. But this book is amazing. Hitler's Generals by W.E.Hart. Baron von Fricht. All of these generals, they're bloodthirsty bastards. But the majority of them were not possessed with killing civilians. And that's why Hitler had to form his own SS divisions and his own military to go out and promote the final solution. Now, he did have the help of these generals in it, but what an amazing story. Amazing story. Fritsch's story is worth buying a book alone. Or if you can read it online, I got it one time in the Internet Archives had it, and it was readable. And I read his story there, but reading it in this book was so much better, because I was able to read it at my own pace and just catch every little bit of information. I'm going to make a video about Colonel General Baron Werner von Fricht, based on what's in this book. Like I said, the Wikipedia entry about this guy actually repeats almost word for word the Nazi way that he died. Now, when they murdered him, they immediately, the SS troops that were around him, they sent a lie out that said that Frisch was killed, but not to miss him, because he wanted to stop the SS from doing its job. He was a weakling. And then there was another story, which this is the one that's in Wikipedia, says that Frisch had a suicide wish and that he exposed himself to enemy fire, which is hilarious. And that's what Wikipedia says the way he died. That's the Nazi lie. They're repeating Nazi propaganda in that entry. And the only place I've ever seen it mentioned that Frisch killed those 4 SS officers is in this book. And this was published so that Hitler could read it. If you ever wonder about Werner von Fricht, if you ever saw the Bugs Bunny cartoons, they had the guy with the monocle, the glass, the one monocle like this, that was Fricht. They hated that guy so bad that they demonized his appearance, and then they demonized how he died. But he despised the Nazi hierarchy. He didn't despise the idea of Nazism. He was willing to go along with it. But one of the #1 things I found out about this book is that Germany was not just Nazis. Germany had a long-standing history of military excellence based on their history. Like families. They had a big thing about generational involvement in the military. So much so that they had a general who married a woman of lesser standing, and they had a fit about it. I'm like, man, y'all are expending way too much energy on that. But it was a matter of almost life and death to them, the way that you found your wife and married her. That's how seriously the military complex took their societal order. And they were a world unto themselves. One of the military leaders says that we do not serve, we are not the servants of a country, we are a military that conquered a country. So he says it right there, look, we're not going to take no crap. We will protect this country, and we will defeat its enemies. But we don't serve anyone but our own intelligence and targets and aims, and we will take care of what has to be taken care of. And when they killed Frisch, they destroyed the future of Nazi Germany, because Frisch was a guy who planned it all. And when they started having problems, if they had had Frisch to do the adjustments, they'd have got Russia. They got Russia, but they didn't, because Frisch wasn't there. And all the other generals were facing the barrel of a gun from the SS. So in a indirect way, Adolf Hitler killed his own legacy. So, but it's a great book. It's worth the money. It's like $23 online. It's called Hitler's Generals by W.E.Hart, 1944, Doubleday, Durand and Company, Garden City, New York. The 1944 book published by British spies to terrorize Adolf Hitler. The amount of information in here, the detail, can only come from a dozen different sources. It is so completely detailed about the dysfunction in Germany. It is so perfectly crafted that it had to be made as a piece of military propaganda that had to be so accurate as to show Adolf Hitler, we know exactly what's going on in your command and control structure, and we know exactly everything about you and how your generals feel about you, and we're coming for you. So I want to commend the people in the British Secret Intelligence Service, the SIS, MI6, British War Department, GS Service Department, and the Special Operations Executive, who under the name W.E. Hart crafted this book, because it is a masterpiece. I was going to title this the best World War II book about Germany you'll never read, because you won't find this anywhere. You're going to have to buy it. I tried to find it online and I didn't find it.